Let me begin by speaking directly to the part of you that has been questioning everything lately. The part of you that has been wondering, why me? Why the pressure? Why the warfare? Why the misunderstanding? Why the sudden shifts that nobody else seems to be experiencing? Hear me clearly tonight. You are not under attack. You are under construction. You are not forgotten. You are foretold. You are not overlooked. You are overqualified for where God is taking you. There are moments in life when heaven pulls you aside and says, I need you to listen carefully because this season is not ordinary. This is one of those moments. God said this is a setup, but it is a setup that requires wisdom, restraint, and spiritual maturity. And the danger is not the enemy outside of you. The danger is the mistake you could make inside of you. I remember a season when everything around me looked like contradiction. Doors closed without explanation. People who once applauded suddenly questioned. Resources tightened right when the vision expanded. And I asked God, did I miss you? And he answered me with one sentence that changed my life. I am setting the stage, not ending the story. What felt like isolation was insulation. What felt like delay was divine calibration. What felt like loss was actually leverage. Chosen ones often mistake pressure for punishment, but pressure is proof of potential. You don't put pressure on something that carries no value. You don't guard what is not precious, and you don't refine what has no future. The intensity of your season is not evidence that something is wrong. It is confirmation that something is about to be released. But here is the emergency part of this message. Do not rush the reveal. Do not announce what God told you in private before he gives you permission in public. Do not fight battles he never authorized you to engage. Do not try to prove yourself to people who were never assigned to understand you. The mistake many chosen ones make is reacting emotionally to a spiritually orchestrated process. There is a difference between movement and progress. Just because you can move does not mean you should. Some doors are closed because God is redirecting you, not rejecting you. Some relationships ended because they could not survive where you are going. Some delays exist because if you arrived too early, you would abort the very thing you prayed for. Hear this clearly. God is working behind what you cannot see. He is aligning people you have not met yet. He is shifting systems you don't control. He is rearranging timing so that when you step in, you won't just arrive, you will dominate. But if you get impatient, if you compromise, if you step outside of instruction, you can delay what was already scheduled. I had to learn that silence is not denial. Waiting is not weakness. Obedience is not passivity. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to stay still while heaven moves on your behalf. Because when God sets you up, he does it in layers, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and structurally, so that when the blessing arrives, it doesn't crush you. This is why the enemy has been trying to distract you, offend you, exhaust you, and rush you. Because if you slow down enough to discern, you will realize that the trap was never meant to stop you. It was meant to position you. What you thought was the enemy blocking you was actually God steering you. So now comes the call to action. Refuse to panic. Refuse to compare. Refuse to explain yourself. Guard your spirit. Sharpen your discipline. Deepen your prayer life. Align your decisions with instruction, not emotion. Because the setup is already in motion and your obedience is the key that unlocks the next door. Lift your expectations, elevate your thinking. This is not the season to quit, retreat, or shrink. This is the season to stand still and see. God said, if you don't make this one mistake, what I have prepared will exceed what you imagined. You are not late. You are not behind. You are right on schedule. And the setup is waiting for you. You are not random, and you are not an afterthought. Before your name was ever spoken on earth, it was already known in heaven. Your life is not the result of coincidence, family, background, or circumstance aligning by accident. You were chosen intentionally, strategically, and deliberately. There is a divine fingerprint on your destiny And that is why your journey has never looked ordinary. From an early point, you sensed there was something different about you. You didn't quite fit in, you didn't fully blend, and you often felt set apart, even when you tried to be like everyone else. That was not confusion, that was calling. God does not choose people and then figure out what to do with them later. He chooses with assignment in mind. Being chosen does not always feel like favor at first. Sometimes it feels like isolation. Sometimes it feels like misunderstanding. Sometimes it feels like carrying weight that others don't seem to notice or respect. But the choosing comes with responsibility, and responsibility comes with pressure. That pressure is not there to break you, it is there to shape you. When God marks someone, he also allows seasons that stretch their character so they can sustain their purpose. That is why you have survived things that should have destroyed you. That is why you kept standing when others folded. That is why quitting never fully satisfied, even when you were tired. Something in you knows there is more. You must understand this deeply. Not everyone will recognize the oil on your life, and that is intentional. If everyone affirmed you early, you would rely on applause instead of alignment. God often hides his chosen ones until they are ready, because exposure without preparation produces pride, but obscurity produces power. The rejection you faced was not because you lacked value. It was because people could not access what God had not yet revealed. You were protected, not punished, covered, not canceled, positioned, not postponed. When you accept that you are chosen on purpose, your perspective changes. You stop begging for validation and start walking in authority. You stop chasing approval and start honoring instruction. You realize that every detour, every closed door, every lonely stretch was shaping your discernment. God was teaching you how to hear him without noise, trust him without evidence, and obey him without explanation. This is what separates chosen ones from the crowd. They learn to move by divine direction, not public opinion. So if you have been wondering why your path has been narrow, why your tests have been intense, and why your growth has been uncomfortable, let this settle in your spirit. Selection always precedes separation. God pulls you aside before he sends you forward. And the fact that you are still standing, still believing, still pressing means the choosing is active, alive, and unfolding right now. What you have been calling opposition is actually orchestration. What feels like resistance is often redirection. And what looks like delay is divine timing at work. When God is setting something up, he rarely announces it with comfort. He allows pressure, contradiction, and moments that force you to question what you thought you knew. The setup does not look like success in the beginning. It looks like confusion, like things falling apart instead of coming together. But heaven is not moved by appearances. Heaven moves by purpose. There are seasons where it seems like everything that could go wrong does go wrong all at once. Plans collapse, support disappears, doors close without warning. And in those moments, the natural instinct is to fight, to push harder, to force outcomes. But some battles are not meant to be fought, they are meant to be observed. God allows certain things to move out of the way because if they stayed, they would block what is coming. The setup requires subtraction before addition because you cannot carry new weight with old structures. Think about how many times you were frustrated by a no that later turned out to be protection. How many times were you disappointed by rejection only to realize it redirected you to something greater? God does not waste pain. Every setback you faced was training your discernment, strengthening your endurance, and sharpening your focus. What the enemy intended as a trap, God redesigned as a platform. What was meant to exhaust you was actually building your capacity. The setup often feels lonely because God is reducing noise. Too many voices create confusion, and confusion creates delay. When God isolates you, it is not to abandon you, but to instruct you. In quiet seasons, he recalibrates your thinking, strips away dependency on people, and teaches you to lean fully on Him. That is where clarity is born. That is where vision becomes sharp. That is where confidence stops coming from outside affirmation and starts rising from internal conviction. If you could see behind the scenes, you would realize how many things had to move out of alignment so that the right things could move into place. Some people had to exit. Some habits had to break. Some plans had to fail, not because they were bad, but because they were not aligned with where God was taking you. The setup rearranges your environment so that when the moment arrives, you are not distracted, divided, or dependent. You are ready. So when life feels like it is pressing you from every angle, resist the urge to panic. Pressure is often a sign that something is being formed. Diamonds are not created in comfort. They are created under intense force. What you are experiencing is not chaos, it is construction. God is not tearing you down. He is building something through you, and the setup is closer to completion than you think. The greatest danger in a divine setup is not what happens to you, but how you respond while it is happening. There is a mistake that quietly delays destiny, and it is rarely obvious in the moment. It is the mistake of reacting emotionally to a season that requires spiritual discernment. When pressure rises, the temptation is to speak too quickly, decide too fast, or move without instruction. But haste has a way of interrupting what patience was about to complete. And many people step out of alignment not because they stopped believing, but because they stopped listening. They allowed frustration to become their compass instead of faith. They assumed that discomfort meant they were off track, when in reality, discomfort was proof that they were growing. The chosen often sabotage momentum by trying to escape the process instead of allowing the process to finish its work. You cannot rush refinement without weakening the result. Another subtle mistake is explaining yourself to people who are not assigned to your destiny. Every time you feel the need to defend, justify, or convince, you leak energy that should be reserved for obedience. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Some people are only meant to see the result, not the preparation. God never required you to be understood by everyone. He required you to be obedient to Him. There is also the mistake of fighting battles God never instructed you to engage. Not every attack deserves a response, and not every criticism requires correction. Some conflicts are distractions designed to pull you out of position. When you are chosen, the enemy cannot stop your calling, so he tries to exhaust your focus. If he can get you emotionally invested in side battles, you will miss the moment when the real door opens. Perhaps the most dangerous mistake of all is compromising standards to relieve pressure, lowering integrity, cutting corners, or settling for less because waiting feels too heavy can cost more than you realize. What God is preparing requires character to match capacity. If you arrive early but unprepared, the blessing becomes a burden. That is why obedience must remain non-negotiable, even when the season feels unfair. This is not the time to abandon discipline, silence discernment, or substitute prayer with panic. The setup demands restraint, clarity, and trust. What you do in this moment determines whether the process accelerates or extends. Stay aligned, stay attentive, and stay obedient, because one wrong move in a sensitive season can delay what was already within reach. There are seasons when God grows quiet, not because He has withdrawn, but because He is working at a depth that words cannot reach. Silence often feels uncomfortable because it removes our sense of control. We like instructions, confirmations, and signs we can point to, but God's silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. When He stops speaking loudly, it is usually because He has already spoken clearly, and now He is watching to see if you will trust what He said without needing constant reassurance. In those quiet stretches, faith matures. You learn the difference between trusting God's voice and chasing His validation. When everything around you feels uncertain and prayers seem to echo back unanswered, it can feel like abandonment. But divine silence is often an invitation to maturity. God is teaching you how to stand on the last word he gave you, even when circumstances contradict it. This is where belief becomes conviction, and conviction becomes unshakable confidence. Silence also exposes what has been propping you up. When God steps back from overt intervention, you discover whether your strength has been rooted in his presence or in visible outcomes. It is easy to feel faithful when prayers are answered quickly and doors open smoothly. It is much harder to remain steady when nothing seems to move. Yet it is in that stillness that God strengthens your inner life, develops endurance, and aligns your motives. He strips away dependency on feeling so that your faith is anchored in truth. There are battles being fought on your behalf that do not require your involvement. While you wait, God is shifting systems, softening hearts, and rearranging circumstances beyond your reach. His silence does not mean inactivity, it means complexity. There are too many moving parts for you to manage, so he asks you to remain still while he works. If he revealed everything at once, the weight of the knowledge would overwhelm you. Silence protects you from information you are not yet ready to carry. This is why patience in quiet seasons is powerful. Waiting trains you to discern God's presence without constant evidence. It sharpens your spiritual sensitivity and deepens your trust. You begin to recognize that God's timing is not delayed, it is deliberate. When he finally speaks again, it is not to restart the process, but to release what has already been prepared. And when that moment comes, you will realize that the silence was not absence, it was alignment. Everything hinges on how you respond in this season, because divine movement is often activated by human alignment. God prepares opportunities, but he releases them when your posture matches his purpose. This is not a passive waiting where you do nothing. It is an intentional positioning where every decision, thought, and action is brought into agreement with instruction. Your response is the final key that turns preparation into manifestation. Faith in this moment must be paired with discipline. It is not enough to believe something is coming. You must live like it is. That means guarding your words, because what you speak can either reinforce faith or empower fear. It means managing your habits, because small compromises weaken spiritual authority. It means choosing consistency over convenience. Even when no one is watching and nothing seems to be changing, these unseen decisions are shaping what you will be trusted with next. Your response also reveals your readiness. Gratitude in the middle of uncertainty signals maturity. Obedience without applause demonstrates trust. When you continue to show up, pray, prepare, and pursue excellence despite delays, you communicate to heaven that you can handle increase. God often tests stewardship in lack before he releases abundance. If you remain faithful in the unseen, you position yourself to be entrusted with what is visible. There is also power in expectation, not a desperate, anxious anticipation, but a confident awareness that something has already been set in motion. Expectation sharpens your discernment. You become more selective about what you allow into your spirit, more intentional with your time, and more sensitive to direction. You stop entertaining distractions because you understand that focus is required at this level. You recognize that this season is fragile and mishandling it could delay what is close. Your response must ultimately move you forward, not just emotionally, but practically. Prepare as if the door could open at any moment. Develop the skills, strengthen your character, and refine your vision. God responds to readiness. When preparation meets opportunity, momentum follows. And when the moment arrives, it will not feel rushed or chaotic. It will feel earned, aligned, and undeniable, because you responded correctly when it mattered most. This moment is requiring more from you than emotion. It is demanding intentional alignment. Heaven is already in motion, but the release is connected to your posture, not your urgency. When God prepares something significant, he watches how you carry yourself while you wait. Your response reveals whether you see this season as a burden or as a responsibility. The way you show up now is shaping how you will be trusted later. You are being called to respond with maturity, not impulse. That means choosing obedience when it feels inconvenient and restraint when reaction feels justified. It means mastering your inner world before expecting change in your outer world. God often delays the external shift until the internal shift is complete. If your thinking, discipline, and discernment are not aligned, the blessing arrives before you are ready to manage it. Readiness is not about desire, it is about stability. Every small decision you make right now is either reinforcing alignment or creating resistance. What you tolerate matters. What you entertain matters. What you repeat matters. Patterns formed in waiting seasons become habits in fulfilled seasons. That is why God is so intentional about how you move when nothing seems to be happening. He is not just preparing an outcome. He is preparing you to sustain it. There is also a call to respond with confidence, not desperation. Desperation rushes, but confidence rests. Confidence trusts that timing is intentional and that nothing meant for you will miss you. When you stop chasing outcomes and start stewarding instruction, peace replaces anxiety. You no longer feel the need to force doors, explain yourself, or prove your worth. You understand that what is truly assigned to you will open without manipulation. Your response must reflect expectation without pressure, prepare without panic, build without announcement, pray without performance. The discipline you maintain now becomes the foundation you stand on later. When the moment comes, you will not have to scramble or adjust. You will step in naturally because you have already aligned yourself with what God was preparing all along. There is a final layer to this season that many overlook, and it is the call to remain anchored when momentum begins to shift. When things start to change, even subtly, the temptation is to relax discipline or assume the work is done. But transitions require as much focus as waiting does. God often tests consistency at the point of breakthrough because sustainability matters more than arrival. How you manage progress determines whether it multiplies or fades. As doors begin to open, discernment becomes critical. Not every opportunity is an assignment, and not every invitation is alignment. Expansion attracts options, but wisdom selects direction. You must stay rooted in the instruction that carried you through obscurity, because success has a way of changing priorities if you are not grounded. What kept you humble in silence must keep you steady in visibility. God is watching to see if you will remain teachable when affirmation increases. This is also where humility protects you. Elevation exposes character. Influence magnifies intention. If pride enters, clarity exits. That is why God refines motives before he releases momentum. You are being trained to move with authority without arrogance, confidence without comparison, and power without performance. The goal is not just to rise, but to remain effective once you do. There will be moments when things feel faster, lighter, and more affirming than before. Do not misinterpret ease as permission to disengage spiritually. Ease is often confirmation that alignment is working. Stay prayerful, stay disciplined, stay aware. What God is releasing through you will require stewardship, not just celebration. You are stepping into a phase where consistency protects what obedience unlocked. This season is shaping how you carry responsibility, visibility, and impact. What you do now determines how long you stay there. Remain grounded, remain obedient, remain attentive. The same God who set this up is the God who will sustain it as long as you continue to move with humility, clarity, and unwavering alignment. There is a truth that cannot be overstated. The way you respond in this moment is the very thing that determines whether your breakthrough will be immediate or delayed. God has already prepared the path, and he has already orchestrated the elements of your next season. Yet the release of favor, promotion, and opportunity hinges on your ability to remain steady, obedient, and discerning. It is not enough to recognize the setup. You must actively align with it. Your posture, your decisions, your restraint, and your faithfulness all function as keys that unlock what has been prepared for you. Every temptation to react, every urge to explain, every whisper of fear or frustration is actually a test of your readiness. The enemy knows the power of your moment, and he will try to provoke you into premature action. He will attempt to distract you, manipulate you, and shake your confidence so that you act before God's timing. But responding impulsively, even in good intentions, can disrupt the very process that is meant to elevate you. This is why discernment is critical. You must learn to pause, to pray, and to listen intently, because every response in this season is a choice that either accelerates or delays destiny. Do not underestimate the importance of consistency during this period. Small, faithful actions that honor God's guidance compound into momentum that cannot be stopped. Protect your spirit, guard your time, and prioritize alignment over approval. Every word you speak, every step you take, every connection you nurture must be weighed against divine instruction, not emotional impulse. This is how God separates preparation from premature action. This is how he ensures that the breakthrough arrives in full force and not in fragments that could overwhelm or misdirect you. Expectation rooted in obedience becomes a powerful force. You do not have to force the outcome. You only need to steward what has been entrusted to you. Prayer becomes sharper, discernment becomes keener, and vision becomes clearer when you operate in this alignment. You begin to recognize patterns, sense opportunities, and avoid traps because your awareness is heightened. This is the advantage of walking in God's setup. You move with insight that others cannot see, understanding the invisible orchestration behind the scenes. Ultimately, your response in this season defines the quality of your arrival. Breakthrough is not merely about what happens externally, it is about who you have become internally. Patience, humility, obedience, and faith are not just virtues in waiting. They are instruments of power in release. When the moment comes, you will step into it fully prepared, fully equipped, and fully aligned because your response has matched the magnitude of what God has been preparing. This is why you must never underestimate the significance of today, of this choice, of this posture, because your alignment now determines the impact of your destiny tomorrow.